Greetings, everybody. Steve here. How are you all doing? It's April 3rd, 2021. We all know what that means. Another day, another story. And this is a good one. This story is a victory scored for housewives everywhere. Or at least housewives in Salem, Oregon. So it'd be April 3rd, 1919, when this particular story is reported on. We're just about a year shy of women finally getting their voting rights. And I did a video a little while back on this channel delving into the concept of women's rights and how this particular commission in Washington, I believe it was, decided that women weren't allowed to set up bowling pins at bowling alleys. They were not allowed to have that job. But meanwhile, women had been cleared to do other much more demanding jobs. So it really didn't make a lot of sense. It just seemed like a bunch of dudes that were scared that women were getting too much too quick. And so they would just come up with these obscene reasons, these obscene things that they would still try to prevent women from being able to do that just made absolutely no sense. But we're dealing with primitive minds, I think, in some circumstances here. And this is kind of along the, I mean, it's not really the same thing, but it's kind of along the same lines of, you know, and around that same time, that was a 1918 case, this is 1919. It's all, you know, at this period building up to women finally getting the right to vote. And this was a, you know, and this wasn't a, you know, workers' rights type situation. This was more of a, you know, First Amendment thing, freedom of speech kind of thing. And it's really kind of just ridiculous that just a little over 100 years ago, something like this had to actually be taken to a court before a judge, for the judge to stipulate what the proper resolution should be. Unfortunately, in this case, the presiding judge did draw the proper conclusion. So a little bit before this particular date, April 3rd, 1919, a woman named Josie Stotler had an argument with her husband. It doesn't really delve into the article. It doesn't really delve into, you know, the meat and bones of what it was. But essentially, Mrs. Stotler was angered at her husband. I'm thinking her husband was cheating on her, or at least she was of that impression. And here's why. Of course, I'm relying on just a certain, literally a single word in the article to reach this theory. But it was expressed that Miss Stotler got irate and kind of snapped at her husband when she wanted him to, and he refused to come out of a house. He didn't say come out of the house, which would more imply that it was their home that they had together. They said he didn't come out of a house, like he was at somebody else's home. So I get the vibe that he was over at some other woman's house and she found out and she was pissed and she was like, get your ass out here right now. And he was like, you can't tell me what to do, woman. And an argument ensued, at which time when either she broke in or he finally came out, she proceeded to just curse his name to the ground, read him to filth, and she even like slapped at him and ended up like scratching him a little bit. So his retort was to take his wife to court over this. So literally when, I mean, yeah, she scratched him, but it seemed more like the argument that was being made, the big reason for this whole thing going to court, was that it was like, I'm guessing the husband was angry that the wife had spoken to him in such a manner. And the focus of the trial, or a court proceeding, I don't really think it was a trial, but the focus of the court proceeding was more, does a woman have a right to speak to her husband in and aggressive way? Does she have a right to curse at her husband when she's mad? Does she have a right to yell at her husband when she's mad? You know, and obviously in this case, it seems like her husband instigated her anger with his behavior. So of course, anybody with half a brain today would look at those questions and say, yes, of course she has the right to be angry. And to, you know, especially if she, you know, catches her husband in a suspicious situation, he's acting suspicious, she has reason to believe that he's up to something that is no good for their relationship. Yeah, she has a reason to yell and scream and curse. And so, yeah, so it seems like the case went to court primarily for being like an assault case. Because she scratched him a little bit, but it seemed again like the focus was more, you know, is this the way a woman ought to behave? Women are supposed to be subtle, submissive, dainty creatures, there to make beauty and purity. I don't know, I feel like I'm gonna throw up a little bit just talking like that. So I think it was really getting at the heart of that, you know, attitude that had prevailed through the generations, that, you know, when it comes to being dirty and screaming and hooting and hollering and raising a stink and raising a fuss, that's a man's job. Ladies don't get to do that. That was really, it seemed, what this was getting at. And I mean, thank God the husband didn't win, even though he did get a little scratched up. What is the story behind this? There's a burnt up door and a bunch of burnt stuff just in front of that house. That's a story for another day. But anyway, it seems the court in this case found in favor of Miss Stotler, which essentially means that she wasn't like busted or charged or fined or anything like that for the actions she took. And I even like the verbiage in the article, how they describe essentially what the decision put forth by the judge on this matter meant in terms of not just Miss Stotler, but in terms of what women in general should be allowed to do. And the verbiage, I'm gonna botch this, but essentially what was said was, when a wife is mad, she has the right to yell at her husband and use whatever words she deems fit in that situation. And that even a little scratching, it's not like you can't just scratch the guy, claw him up, but a little bit of scratching is justified as well. So they absolutely sided with her and said, you know, you piss your wife off, she has the right to get pissed at you. She has the right to yell at you. And if she uses words you don't like, suck it. And then a year later, women were finally allowed to vote. How grand. You know, it only took a really long time for these basic rights to happen, but when I read, it's a very short article, but when I read the way that verbiage was put out, that a wife has the right to use whatever words she deems necessary when she's mad at her mate, that is justified. And I was like, damn right. So I couldn't pass up that story for today. And why is this starting to sprinkle? It's not supposed to rain at all today. Granted, this is Portland, Oregon, so where I'm living, so the weather's unpredictable, but I am feeling sprinkles from the sky, so I better wrap this up. Thank God I'm at the end of the story. In the end, the wife won, which is good, because again, I think her husband was cheating on her. But all that said, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you're enjoying this series of videos that I'm doing once a day. And as always, to help my little channel grow, remember to like, share, subscribe, hit up my Patreon. The link to my Patreon is in the description below. I'm always posting new stuff there to give you a little bang for your buck, especially for helping me out with what I'm trying to do out here. And also, in addition to my Patreon being linked below, my Instagram and Facebook pages are also linked below, that are closely related to the content that I'm producing here, as well as the content I'm producing on my other YouTube channel, Steve the Amateur Story. If you haven't subscribed there yet, get over there and do it. You will not be disappointed. Whew. And all that said, this is Steve trying to shelter myself from the rain. See you tomorrow.